Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone. I'm here with the Lear Post's hockey writer, Greg Harder. We're talking about the Western Hockey League's East Division Hub, which is based in Regina until late April. Greg's been on top of this as he is with everything hockey related since the start. So a lot of this is going to be me peppering Greg with questions to satisfy my own curiosity and presumably yours as well. So, Greg, thanks for doing this. I'd just like to get your thoughts just off the top on the bubble concept and just generally having live sports to watch and follow for the first time in slightly more than a calendar year, the WHL season from last year having been suspended and ultimately canceled.
Thanks for that intro, Rob. I appreciate it. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for people in our business, right? We live to watch sports, and we haven't been able to watch sports for a year. So this is very exciting. I'm going to be in the building to watch a real live hockey game, and that hasn't happened since last March 11th, I believe. So just that to begin with. I mean, it's exciting for an observer. I can just imagine how exciting it is for the players and for the coaches because they live this stuff. And, I've talked to a number of players along the way and talked to them about what it's like living in the bubble and so on. And they don't give you the impression that the whole setup is any kind of burden at all. They're just really excited that they're going to get to play hockey. They're going to get to do what they love. So I think that's a great thing, and really look forward to seeing them on the ice.
What kind of feat do you think it was for them just to put this together? I mean, it's a gargantuan undertaking, and it is also unprecedented. And we're not talking about people by and large who are like the NFL or NHL or Major League Baseball, where there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with a television contract that they want to be able to activate. To me, and the speed and efficiency with which this came together are also noteworthy. What kind of feat was it just to assemble this on the part of a bunch of major junior operators?
Well, you're absolutely right, Rob. I mean, it was a massive undertaking. Um, it feels like it's all come together pretty quickly, pretty late, just because approval didn't come until I believe the end of February. But I mean, this is something that I'm told at the league level they've been working on almost from the time that last season was canceled. So, I mean, they've been working behind the scenes. There's only so much that they could do, so much they could plan for because there are so many unknowns, obviously. But and then it came down to they were determined initially to play in each individual center and not to do a hub, but it ended up that was a requirement of the health authorities to get this done, so they made it happen. I have a sneaking suspicion that it may not have happened if it wasn't for in Saskatchewan anyway, if it wasn't for the fact that the provincial government has thrown some money at this and bailed the teams out to some extent, especially for those small market teams. This has been a really tough go for, I'm sure, all teams, but you have to really look at the Swift Currents, the Moose Jaws, the PAs, the community-owned teams. I know as far as putting all this together, I know Curtis Hunt, former Pats coach, current Raiders GM, spent a lot of time working on this, working on the logistics, because there's so much that goes on with COVID. They want to keep everybody as separate as possible. They're going to be very specific windows for arriving and leaving the rink. They don't want anybody crossing paths. Obviously, they will on the ice, but they want to mitigate any potential issues off the ice as much as they can. So, I mean, there are so many logistics involved in this. We only know maybe the surface of it because we're not in the building and we don't see it, and we're not going through it every day. But I know from what the players and coaches have told me, it is very different, but really in the end, they're just happy to play hockey, so they're living with it.
How important is it to play hockey, even with a truncated season without the championship at the end, just to get something in? How valuable is that for the teams, the players, everyone?
Well, that's been an interesting point of discussion through all this because when the league made its announcement that they were going to do the 24 game season initially, and then the hub, there was a lot of talk about this being a development season. Well, I brought that up to some players and coaches in particular with the Pats, and of course, um, they have a bit of an issue with using that term. They play hockey to win, and they also understand that there is value to winning anytime. And even if it's just about setting the tone for next year, I mean, it has to be difficult not to, as you said, not to have that pot of gold at the end, knowing that there's a championship to play for. Now, was Regina realistically going to be a team playing for a championship? No, they just want to be in the playoffs at this point in their rebuild. We don't even know if there are going to be playoffs as of right now. Probably not. So they have to find internal motivation. There are a lot of ways to approach that. There's just developing that winning mentality that a team wants and needs. But there's also there are going to be scouts to play for, and everybody has individual goals, whether they want to be recruited by a top college or they want to be scouted and drafted, play pro. I think the players really right now are looking from within and finding their own motivation, but there is still a team motivation because everybody wants to win.
I mean, so much of the talk has been about Connor Bedard and the 15-year-old phenom with the Pats, but we've got 7 teams in this market, and now in Regina for the bubble. There's a lot of really intriguing players overall, beyond the focus on the Pats. Who intrigues you from the other 6 teams?
Well, there are a lot of good players. I mean, you just have to look around. Brandon has some top guys. Ridley Gregg, Schneider, first round NHL pick. Brandon has some really good players coming up. I mean, Saskatoon has a really good solid core still. Looks to potentially be battling with teams like the Pats and so on. PA still looks to be very good. I mean, you just look at Gooley, who's just come back from an NHL camp. He's an elite guy. It's going to be very interesting to see Max Paddock playing in Regina in another uniform. He's a guy who's playing for a pro career right now, and he's maybe the best goaltender in the division, although Roddy Ross of the Pats might have something to say about that. So there are a lot of good players to watch from every team.
So what happens? I mean, there's a lot of players and a lot of moving parts, and not a hermetically sealed bubble like we had or like there was with the National Hockey League or the NBA. Suppose there's a COVID test or a positive COVID test. What then?
Well, that's the great unknown, and that's the elephant in the room, right? Is COVID, because so far it's been very smooth sailing across the league. The league's been sending out releases, updating us on COVID results, and based on what they're telling us, there hasn't been a single positive test so far. So, like I say, it's been smooth sailing. It's full steam ahead right now, but there's always that what if. We know how unpredictable COVID is. There are no certainties here, even bubble. So that remains to be seen. I mean, it would clearly not be good if there were a positive test or test, because that means that team has to shut down immediately for 2 weeks, and they're already only playing for 6 weeks. So that's going to be very interesting to see how they handle that. But I think we can all hope that with this hub concept, I think they're really doing this the best way they can to mitigate the risks. And there is a lot of optimism that they're going to be able to get through this.
The thing is, if one team has to shut down, then that affects another team's schedule, which is, I mean, they're just the repercussive effects, and you really don't have any opportunity for makeup games or anything. I don't think it's just pretty much that fortnight is basically a scratch, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Oh, like you're right, and there would be a whole domino effect, and I think that's a big part of the reason why this hub concept is so important, and it's proven to be successful. Although, as I say, there are no guarantees. So this is the best way for them to try to get through without those positive tests, because the dominoes that would fall from there would be very difficult to salvage the season when it's such a short window.
I've thought too of this market, us being in Saskatchewan. I think there's a more ravenous appetite for sporting events of some magnitude in this market than perhaps in others. Because if you live in one of the neighboring provinces, or if you go east from Saskatchewan, there have been NHL teams that have gotten going. If you're in Toronto, you can follow the Blue Jays and the Raptors, for example. But in Saskatchewan, we're just kind of everything's disappeared. We don't have the Rough Riders, and there hasn't been hockey at the peak level as it exists in this province. So I think here, perhaps more than anywhere else on our flanks in Saskatchewan, we're really feeling it as far as the lack of teams with some profile that we follow. What kind of tonic do you think it will be for every market in Saskatchewan, plus a couple in Manitoba, to just have this as a day-to-day factor in our sporting lives now?
Well, I think probably you and I are as good an example as any, Rob, because not only do we make our living doing this, but we're also sports fans and we have
Yeah.
a passion for it. So yeah, I mean, there's been a huge void professionally and personally, and we know how much people love their sports in Saskatchewan. It's been said that this is a rider town, not a football town, but there's a a tremendous base of sports fans here and hockey fans. And I think it will be a tonic. I know it will be for me. Uh, I'll be able to be in the buildings from what to be in the building from what I understand. Fans won't be, so that's probably a bit of a tough pill to swallow. But it's still a distraction, and it's a little slice of normalcy. It's how did the Pats do last night? How did the Warriors do last night? Connor Bedard scored his first goal. It's something else to talk about other than COVID, and I think we can probably all use that.
Absolutely. Greg, thanks for your insights. As always, they're appreciated, and look forward to seeing how this bubble unfolds as it does pretty much right through the end of April. Thanks so much, Greg. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.